Now, once you have all of your sketches completed, then you can go ahead and you can start building your wire armature. Remember, the armature is a lot like the skeleton. So one of the great reasons to have you draw your sketch like this is because you can actually say, oh, okay, this could represent, you know, the lines could easily represent sort of the wire structure, you know, of your figurative sculpture. So you kind of think, okay, it kind of goes like this. So I got this leg, and I kind of have my spine here, and then I've got these wires and this leg wire out here. So it'll make a little bit more sense when you're going from a two-dimensional thing to three-dimensional. So I've got my wire, I've got my needle nose pliers, and again, right here is where you make the cut. So when I make the cut, I bring it in right there to all the way to the back, and that'll cut it right there. Okay, needle nose are great, of course, too, because you can use them to bend the wire as you need it. Now, you should have quite a bit of wire. You won't need all of it. It's probably best to start out by not cutting it into lengths, although I'm going to sort of guesstimate here, because as you curve the wire, of course, the length will shrink up. So I'm just going to cut off mine not quite in half. And so I also have my cardboard for my base, and I went ahead and I cut this one in half, but I'm going to save two of these just so it gives it a little bit more strength. So I could just sort of tape these together, and later on, once we get to the plaster strips, we can kind of really reinforce this. All right. Now, you may not need to have a base. Your sculpture, your figurative sculpture, might stand on its own. But you kind of have to figure that out eventually, when you first start, right? Like this one's going to sort of be really kind of leaning. These could both be at the same spot where they're both standing still. But if I have a lot of movement in my figure, then it might not work out so well. So, all right, I'm going to start out with sort of the foot here. So I'll go ahead and kind of create. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I could just have this be just a line, but I'm actually going to create sort of like a little V and then kind of go back a little bit. And the reason why is because if I tape this down just to this one, it's going to move. But if I have it like this, this is not going anywhere once I tape that. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to kind of come back. And I'm going to go ahead and sort of pinch this a little bit together. And really the pliers, you really need them for cutting, not quite as much. So when I tape this down, it'll be pretty sturdy. Okay, so I'm not going to tape it down quite yet. So let's see, I'm going to kind of go out, and it's going to kind of bend down like this. Let's see. Kind of into my, let's go up a little bit further. So I have sort of this part right here, this part right in here, and I'm going to come out with that down, and I'm going to change my pose a little bit and have it kind of going up like this. That's not going to work. I'm going to go like that. That looks like a pretty interesting little pose. I'm going to turn that a little bit. And then kind of be my lower leg. And this is to sort of be my foot. So I'm going to make another sort of little V here. So I've got my foot coming out, and I might pose that up a little bit more. Maybe I want to bring this up a little bit more like that. So I've really got this kind of interesting pose here. And I can go ahead and cut this off. Again, make sure it's all the way in the back. And save this because you'll need this for something else, most likely. Okay, and I've kind of got my base thing. So now I know I need for sure to have a base. So I'm going to go ahead and tape this down with a couple pieces of tape. Kind of in the middle. I'm going to see here. I'm going to bring it a little bit off. I have to try to figure out like where the most of my sculpture is going to be. If I'm leaning off this way, I'll probably move this over here so I have more space of a platform so to keep it still. Okay, so I might do that. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'll just kind of get it in there, kind of really make sure that it's sort of really folded around here. And I'm going to go ahead and take another piece of tape, put it on there. And sort of when you're taping this, sort of really make sure that you crease it in there really well so there's not a big gap. So I kind of do this, and that, creasing in there like so. All right, that seems pretty stable. Now, so I've changed my pose a little bit, and that's totally okay, especially when you start with the wire. You know, it's very bendable. You can say, oh, I can pose this any way I'd like. Now, I'm going to start with this area here, okay? And so how am I going to sort of make a spine? Now, I could connect that like that. I'm going to go ahead and use my little scrap piece here. Now, connecting this. If you connect this like this, we don't have soldering equipment or welding equipment. If we did, we could put a strong solder, because this has plastic on it, so I'd have to take that off. So if this was bare metal, I could solder that together and it would be a fairly good bond. But because we don't, you don't want to try to tape this like vertical here to like a horizontal. That is not going to work. If you tape laterally, so where they're both horizontal, and you tape here, that's going to work, and then all I have to do is bend this in the direction that I want. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'll make myself a little L, and I'm going to tape that onto there. I'm actually going to make this a little bit curved. So sort of follow that curve right there. And then I'll go ahead and tape that down. Now, I already see a problem. Actually, that's not too bad. Now, this is sort of moving, so I may need some more tape. Now, if that becomes a really big problem, then I might need to attach things a little bit differently. Okay, but I'm going to bend that about. But that feels pretty sturdy, okay, because I add a little bit more tape on there. That's not really going anywhere, which is great. If it was, so if you just have the shorter little L that you have, that the smaller amount you're going to have on that lateral connection, so you're going to be more movement. So the longer area you have, the less movement you're going to have. And what I could have done is I could have brought this in, bent this out, and had this follow this around and done that whole area, and that would have been like a really good tight area. Okay, so I can continue to do the same thing. What I probably would have maybe done a little bit differently is to just go ahead with my entire piece of wire and then make it out, because if I did that, if this was my spine, I could come up, I could come out to my arms, and I could make my arm the way it wanted to be, and then I could take another vertical piece of wire here, and I could come out for that other shoulder. If you try to cut a piece of wire for every little spot and then try to connect it, it's not really going to work out that well. Okay, so it'll work out pretty well if this is one whole piece of wire and then it connects to your spine, and this is one whole piece of wire that connects to your spine, and these are sort of all one piece right here. But you've really got to pay attention and to make sure you've got enough area where wire is touching another piece of wire so that it won't move.